Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another film theory reaction, and this one is The Walten Files is back, and creepier than ever. Oh gosh, so yeah, that's one of those things, like, I don't actively keep up with The Walten Files, but I do remember, was it like a month or two ago? I remember there being, like, something, it began popping up in my subscription feeds again from people, like, doing reactions or playing, was it playing something? Was there a game? I honestly don't remember. I also did, oh god, well actually, man, I wish I had done a reaction to it actually now, but I remember watching a video where somebody was trying to do, like, an investigation to try to find, like, the FNAF fan game that's basically was the origin of the Walten Files, and, like, how it, like, and, like, trying to find, like, where, find, like, any pieces of it before it was, like, abandoned and, you know, just became, you know, the YouTube series. But honestly, like, in the Walten Files, like, I remember in the beginning, the biggest, you know, kind of point and laugh, or biggest turnoff for it was just the fact that it was, you know, the art style was so poorly done, for lack of a better word. But from what I've seen, you know, the newer videos, the art does get a lot better. And I guess, you know, also the whole roughness of the art style does kind of also feed into the whole, you know, uncanny scariness that, you know, that the series does have. Now, that being said, I'm just surprised that the series has gone on this long without, you know, without an actual, like, completion. Because, like, I know there have been a lot of really weird points. Like, of course, you have, like, wait, was it the Walten Files? I forget. I remember there was a character in some analog horror series where it was, like, the toy maker, and his head was a cube with a face stuck on the front. Was that the Walten Files, or am I thinking of something else? I honestly cannot remember right now. But, I mean, yeah, I mean, I got nothing else to say. Let's just let's actually get this thing started and see, you know, what's new with the Walten Files then. So, yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video, link to my game theory reaction. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because over 3/4 of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my main goal for this year is to hopefully hit 10,000 subscribers if it's possible. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
The Walten Files are back. One of the scariest analog horror series we've ever covered has even more videos and even more mysteries, and we are finally digging into its newest release. And this story is so much darker than I ever expected.
Darker? What? Really?
Hello, Internet!
Okay, honestly, from, like, what little I do remember of the Walten Files plot, like, it involves, you know, basically an entire family being murdered or something, and then them being, like, them possessing, you know, the animatronics, as, you know, you do. I don't know how it could get darker than that.
And welcome to Film Theory, the show that just gets so frustrated when movies drop their trailers at, like, the worst times for us to cover them. Now, if you didn't see, the trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2 dropped last Thursday, just as I was finishing up this script and didn't have time to shift directions. But hey, we'll be diving into that analysis hopefully next week. And in the meantime,
hopefully I'll be able to watch it.
Finally jumping back into the Walten Files, created by animator Martin Walls. Not a bad substitute for FNAF, right? If you don't remember, and I don't blame you, it's been years since we covered this series.
Wait, has it really been years? Man, no wonder I don't remember a lot about this. It's been gone for a while.
The Walten Files is all about some haunted animatronics with bodies stuffed into them in a Chuck E. Cheese-inspired restaurant. Yes, this is wearing its FNAF influence on its sleeve, but unlike FNAF, the Walten Files was able to get much darker with how it treated its subject matter. This series doesn't pull any punches in both its imagery and how its characters react to it. The Walten Files centers on a burger restaurant called Bon's Burgers, founded by Jack Walten and Felix Kranken, with 5 animatronic characters: Bon Bunny, Boozoo, the Ringmaster, Shaw the Sheep, Billy the Clown, and Banny, another rabbit, don't question it. But of course, something goes terribly wrong in the restaurant, as there's a string of disappearances and deaths that eventually lead to it closing, being reopened years later, and of course, more deaths.
Yeah.
We're seeing all of this through the eyes of our main character, Sophie Walten, last surviving member of the Walten family, who has repressed these dark memories but is still being chased by the monster that killed the other Waltens. All of the uploads in the series are actually tapes put together by a mysterious character named Anthony Anthony, as we see in the description of each YouTube video. And while previous entries hid story elements in unlisted videos and the comments section, this newest entry leaned into putting most of its terrifying elements directly in the video itself, as well as sprinkling hints across an ARG website and non-canon uploads on the channel. Honestly, the mystery here is dense, but I wouldn't have that any other way. The Walten Files has never been an easy nut to crack, and while I feel good about what we've put together here today, we're probably gonna need just a little bit more from the series before we can solve everything. But
probably,
for now,
yeah, that's usually how it works.
Theorists, we're jumping back into the Walten Files. So to start things off, just like the other videos in the series, the events of the Walten Files 4 are told out of order. We jump forward and backward in time, see scraps of info from various points in the timeline, and often don't know who exactly a character is supposed to be. So I'm gonna be doing my best to try to piece this together into as coherent a story as I can for you, but I really recommend that you go check out Martin's work to experience it firsthand. Like, for real, the horror just really lands. But what's the story being told here? Well, you can break it down into one of several storylines. Let's dig into them one by one. The first storyline we follow shows us the fates of Ed and Molly Walten. We open on the Brighton Community Schools spring party event of 1974, but the event has clearly ended, and Ed and Molly seek out Felix hoping to get a ride home. We know from earlier in the series that this would be a tragic, fatal mistake, but what exactly happens becomes far clearer here. For instance, we hear more about Felix's drinking problem. It's bad enough that his co-workers all seem to know about it.
I'm gonna be totally honest with him. Knowing Felix, he's probably drinking somewhere in town.
Tragically, as Felix drives them home, his intoxication causes them to crash through a metal railing, hit a tree, and kills the children instantly. Felix himself is injured, but survives. Later.
Oh god, honestly horrible. I mean, like, ignoring the whole, animatronics and hauntings and stuff like that. I mean, what does that even do to a person? I mean, the fact that you survived, but the children didn't. And it was purely your fault. I mean, granted, it's more, you have to take more than enough blame because, driving intoxicated, but still, that just destroys a person.
Later that night, at 12:23 a.m., we see Jack Walten arrive at Felix's house, concerned about his kids. He begins knocking on the doors and windows, desperately trying to get Felix to respond.
Felix, if you do anything to those kids, I'll kill you.
But Felix isn't at home. He's at the accident site and spent the night digging graves for the two kids. Curiously, he also dug a third hole, seemingly for himself, but doesn't do anything with it. He stares at the bloody rocket rabbit doll that Molly was carrying and eventually decides to get rid of the evidence. He carries the kid's bloody doll and backpack through the forest to a nearby cliff where he tosses the backpack over, hoping to get rid of it. However, as he considers throwing the rabbit over and falling himself, Felix can't bring himself to do it and instead returns home with the plush. At his home, we hear that Felix is overcome with feelings of guilt and it's affecting him deeply.
I would imagine.
Sleep since last week.
He finally tells the Waltons what happened about the accident, and the family holds a private funeral for the children, but their bodies are never recovered.
The fact that it's still buried down there, it haunts me every night.
Understandably, the Waltons despise Felix now, and his life begins to disintegrate.
I have no idea what's gonna happen to me now. My life, my business, everything.
And this isn't the only thing haunting Felix now. When Rosemary Walten asks about the Rocket Bunny doll, Felix lies and says that the kids left it at school, but instead, he took it home, and it's in his house. But it isn't alone. We see a shot of the doll in Felix's house, and if you look closely at the glass window behind it, you can see two faces appear from the darkness, the spirits of Ed and Molly attached to the doll and haunting Felix, just like we theorized earlier in the series. And what's even creepier and much worse, the spirits knock on doors inside of Felix's house and call out to him. I don't know about you, but I would be freaking out if I heard this. Felix then opens the door, but only finds the doll. Begging for this nightmare to stop, Felix eventually brings the doll into Bond's Burgers, at the very least just to get it out of his home.
Honestly, I remember I kind of, pointed out, the weird designs of the animatronics and stuff like that. But, you look at Bond, and he has, those weird braces on, his arm. Actually, let me see if I can pull up a full body picture here. But, you look at Bond here, with, the exposed metal on the arms and legs and stuff like that. And you'd think that would be from, just degradation and stuff like that. But no, the doll itself also has that exact same wear on it. Why? was it initially designed like this to begin with? Why would that be? Why? Like, you look, and even the little Bon has it as well. Like, that's really weird.
Creepy stuff, and thankfully, the second storyline we follow here is a little bit less terrifying. Well, mostly. Sprinkled throughout the video are tapes describing how the animatronic characters in the showstoppers were designed and created. For example, we learn that Rosemary Walten, mother of Ed and Molly, whose soul is now trapped inside of Shaw the sheep, originally designed the characters.
She's the one in charge of making the final designs that would later become the characters they are today.
We then jump to a technical test of a new feature of the animatronics, facial recognition. During this period, we hear two technicians talk about the technology, the Felix, and the tragedy surrounding Ed and Molly, and both of the technicians are actually characters we've heard of before, Susan and Charles. If you don't remember, Susan was a character we met earlier in the series, the main technician for the animatronics who was killed. Maybe, it's unclear, she should be dead but might also still be alive in a weird undead way, and has somehow possessed Banny the bunny. Likewise, Charles is a character that has also been missing since around the time the restaurant shut down. This video gives us a bit more insight into the pair and a bit more information about how and why they vanished. Well, at least for Susan, but we'll get back to that in our third big storyline. Anyway, through Susan and Charles, we learn that the animatronics have a pretty advanced facial recognition system installed, which honestly is like pretty crazy for the 1970s. Like,
I mean, again, you know, this is a series that's based off of FNAF, and everything we've learned about FNAF is that, you know, tech is a lot more advanced, at least animatronic tech is a lot more advanced in that universe than, you know, was in real life.
That's some space-age sci-fi technology we're just cramming into these robots. But of course, this is a horror series, and if we introduce this new feature, we have to use it for a scare. We hear a conversation from Susan and Charles about the tragic deaths of Ed and Molly, and the two comment about how they don't believe Felix's story.
You don't think Felix's story lies, don't you?
Story? Nothing. I think something else happened, man. Something worse.
And they're incredibly uncomfortable that the bloody doll that Mary was carrying is now in the restaurant.
I don't even want to think about it. With that freaking doll in the room.
And honestly, it's for good reason. After the pair leave the room, the doll starts moving on its own, approaching one of the animatronics. The facial recognition software runs, detecting two faces, and though it originally can't identify them, it eventually settles on Ed and Molly.
Honestly, that's one of those things, like, with the art style of this, like, being so weird and out there and stuff like that, at the same time, like, you look at, like, oh, the facial recognition, and you have to kind of wonder, is that, you know, just how people look in this universe? Or are those actually, you know, the ghost mangled corpses of two ghost children or something like that? Like, and that's how they look like? Are we supposed to be are we supposed to be disturbed now because of that, or just disturbed in general because people in this universe look really freaky?
We also see two blue squares on the map of the restaurant here, which I assume represents the two spirits, though they were represented by the color red in earlier videos. Not sure why that changed. Anyway, the third big storyline in this video involves the actual disappearance of Susan. Yeah, we actually finally see what happens here in part 4, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. At one point in the tape, we see some text burned into the screen. It's flipped, but when you orient it right, you can see that it's a letter addressed to Felix, concerned about the disappearance of Susan and questioning if Felix had any involvement in it. And though Felix is definitely shady and responsible for multiple deaths already, well, what happened to Susan is much, much worse. In another strange moment, we see a top-down view of the backstage of the restaurant, and a mysterious ghostly figure wanders onto the screen. We actually see this guy a couple other times in the video for like a split second, but this is our clearest view of him so far. The spirit wanders over to the Bon animatronic and enters it, taking possession of it. It's clear that this is the spirit haunting Bon. We then see Susan enter the backstage area, and, well, the results are absolutely brutal. Like, I'm not sure we can show most of this on YouTube brutal. Susan searches for something in the backstage before she's ambushed by Bon. Bon breaks Susan's neck and disfigures her face, taking glee in his work before dragging her deeper into the dark.
See what I said before? Like, this was when the restaurant was open, yet he already had the exposed metal on his like arms. Like what was with that?
Later, we see Bond stuffing Susan's body into the Banny suits, the whole thing witnessed by the spirits of Ed and Molly. All of a sudden, we cut to this strange scene, a field of grass with a white sky. If I were to guess, this is some sort of purgatory. We see the spirits of Molly and Ed arguing here, debating if they should help Susan, before Susan's spirit also enters the scene. Here, we also see the evil white spirit, who introduces himself only as Bon. Really confusing that the spirit who possesses the Bon animatronic is also named Bon, but they're like two different entities? But hey, you can't win them all. Anyway, Bon promises that Susan won't die.
Don't you worry. You're in safe hands, Susan. Welcome to Wonderland.
Bond insists that Susan is still alive, her heart is still somehow beating, which lines up with what we saw in previous entries. He also explains that he likes to fix things, just like Susan, and offers to fix Susan by forcing her into the Banny suit, which she seemingly accepts.
Honestly, are we fairly certain that Bond, the ghost Bond here, not the animatronic Bond, are we sure he's not actually just like this alternate universe's version of William Afton? Kind of associated with rabbits, very strong demon. Maybe this universe's version of William Afton is actually like a demon or something like that. You never know.
This is how Susan came to possess that animatronic, her own eye looking out of Banny's eye socket. It's just dark stuff, man. After Susan and Bond leave, Ed and Molly reappear. They're clearly scared of Bond and decide that they need to wait just a little bit longer before they do, well, whatever it is they're gonna do. And with that, this installment of the Walten Files comes to a close. So, we got a lot of new information in this upload, and even with me taking all the storylines and laying them out pretty clearly, there are still some pretty big mysteries left for us to try to piece together.
Yeah, like who's this Bond character? Like that he just seemingly came out of nowhere.
And the most obvious one, right off the bat, what or who the heck is this Bond spirit? Now, I wish I could come down here and just say that there is a definitive answer, but sadly, I can't. Frankly, we just don't have enough information to properly give an explanation. At first, I wondered if he might be some incarnation of Jack Walton. What exactly happened to Jack is still a pretty big loose end, one that we've been trying to figure out for years, and at first I thought that this episode might tell us a little bit more. See, in a section of the tape describing how the animatronics were designed, Jack's name is missing.
Rosemary Walton, loving wife of... is a brilliant artist.
Did you catch that? Despite being in the closed captions, Jack's name is completely left out of the audio, like it was cut. This was a deliberate decision, and I was wondering if this was somehow the tapes trying to erase Jack, or replace him with Bond, or something like that. A character who was terrified of what he had become with Bond and just trying to erase him from anything else in the story. Additionally, these tapes aren't actually the first time we've seen Bond, or at least this spiritual incarnation of Bond. No, that came from a website called Find Jack Walton from all the way back in 2021. Yeah, there's an ARG website because this is a classic analog horror series. Of course, there's an ARG website.
And you guys never made a video on it? Oh, that sucks. Oh, I want to know more about that.
Oh, it looks much different now. This website started as a sort of missing persons profile for Jack, and huge shoutouts to the fans maintaining the Walten Files wiki for preserving these older versions of the site. Anyway, the original version of the website was just a picture of Jack and a description of where he was last seen, but over time, it updated with new photos that just kept getting creepier and creepier. And then finally, on July 17th, 2023, a new image was found, a monochrome man wearing a black tie with the text, "The future starts now." Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, while this might have seemed like nothing to start with, slowly, the image started duplicating until it basically covered the entire screen. Elsewhere, text read, "Say
Except
my
for
name."
Bond.
And then, "We haven't met before, have we? Pleasure to meet you. My name is..." And then finally, a white man with a black tie, and he says, "Bond." Exactly like he was introduced in the Walten Files 4.
Pleasure to meet you. My name is Bond.
That's a pretty big point in the Bond is Jack theory column. I mean, this was a website dedicated to
that's
Jack,
really
but
weird.
it just doesn't sit quite right with me for a few reasons. Honestly, mostly the same reasons that's been bothering us since the last time we covered the series. See,
because, Jack Walton just sort of disappeared and there was no, actual, explanation. It's like, oh, Jack Walton is missing or something like that. He just he's just gone from the story at one point.
There's another character in the series called the Shadow Man who appears to be responsible for the death of Rosemary and stuffing her into Shaw the sheep. That's a very similar MO to how Bond killed Susan, so I think that these two characters are actually the same character. This connection between the Shadow Man and Bond is actually something Martin Walls got asked about directly, and his only answer was, good question. So I think that there's fire for all of that smoke.
Right,
Anyway, this doesn't really make sense to me that Jack would want to kill Rosemary, or that the ghosts of Ed and Molly would almost seem afraid of Bond in this upload if he were Jack. So
I mean, I could see them being, because obviously if, Bond is, Jack, then obviously something really bad or messed up happened to him. So much so that his kids don't even recognize him or, want to be near him.
So I don't think that's quite the case. No, instead, I actually see a lot more evidence connecting Bond to Felix. Not that they're necessarily the same person, I don't think there's enough to say that, but there's a lot connecting them. Mostly, it's because of the mysterious deaths and murders. All of the people who died are directly connected to Felix, or seem to question Felix's story about the deaths of Molly and Ed. Here, check this out. In the Walten Files 4, we hear that Felix confessed to Jack and Rosemary that Ed and Molly are dead.
I finally told him what happened. It was in my office. It was the longest hour of my life. The most painful conversation I've ever had. Pain in their eyes, the anger. They both hate me now. I have no idea what's going to happen to me now. My life, my business, everything.
Felix is confused about what to do next and worried about his future in the business if this information gets out. And what happens soon afterwards? Jack goes missing, leaving Felix open to eventually take over and move the business. Awfully convenient, isn't it? There's also the case with Susan and Charles, who speculate that there's more happening with Felix than he's letting on, and that his story about Ed and Molly isn't actually true.
You don't think Felix's story lies, don't you?
Story? I think something else happened, man. Something worse.
And again, they both disappear or die. In fact, other than Sophie, who absolutely is a target, the only person central to this story and the deaths of Ed and Molly that we get no indication has disappeared or has been killed is Felix. If Bond had some other reason to want to capture or kill or torture everyone involved with Bond's burgers, either as an act of revenge for the deaths of Ed and Molly or something else entirely, then why is Felix, the co-founder who revived the restaurant after it closed the first time and the person directly responsible for those deaths, not targeted? That doesn't make any sense. I don't believe that we have enough information quite yet to really figure out why or how exactly Felix and Bond are working together, or even if they're doing so intentionally, but something is happening. And if I had to bet about where this story would go next, well, they'll both want to tie up that last loose end for Felix killings of the Walten kids, Sophie Walten. Yeah, as of the ending of the Walten Files 4, Sophie is the last member of the Walten family that's still alive or hasn't disappeared, but that doesn't mean she isn't a target. In the Walten Files 2, we hear a list of people that appear to be targets of the spirits.
Jack, Susan, Charles, Rosemary, Sophie.
As of right now, Sophie's the only person on that list who's still alive.
So, why? If it's, as like at the beginning of the video, it said that she basically blocked out and forgotten everything. So unless you were worried about her remembering and like maybe trying to start an investigation to find out what happened, like, seemingly, everything you're doing is just making it more likely for her to start, investigating herself.
And as we discussed in our last theory, Bond is using the game Bunny Farm to try to jog Sophie's memory and lure Sophie to her death. Plus, in the very first Walten Files episode, we know that the security guard Brian Stells was killed because Bond, quote, he thought I was her. Brian was wearing a uniform that Sophie also used to wear, but that becomes even more interesting when we know why this mix-up happened. If you listen really closely to a conversation between Susan and Charles in the Walten Files 4, we get this little tidbit of information.
But we're going to do a secondary test because the console seems to have trouble detecting the faces.
Oh, the test we did with Sophie, right.
That facial recognition technology, the one that's so good that it can detect the faces of ghosts like Molly and Ed, it couldn't read Sophie's face. Something about Sophie is different, and that's going to play a key role in where exactly this series goes in the future. Stick with me here. One of the additional videos that Martin Walls created and uploaded to the Walten Files channel is called The Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit, a continuation of another special video called The Mysterious House. Now, to be clear, Martin has gone on record saying that these videos are not specifically canon to the Walten Files universe, but I do believe we can use them to get a sense of where Martin's head is at, and potentially see if he's testing ideas for the main canon story. So what happens in these specials? Well, if you don't remember the mysterious house, this was a Halloween special where a group of trick-or-treaters are lured into a house so they can be murdered, and the people responsible share similarities to the showstopper animatronics. Seems oddly similar to the main story that we've laid out so far, doesn't it? And
sounds
in
right.
Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit, we see 4 kids enter another abandoned house, but this one is said to be the home of a group of serial killers called the Watermen. Of course, it turns out that this house is not abandoned, and 2 of the kids meet a gruesome fate at the hands of the killers. But this story does end on a somewhat lighter note, when the main character Jay uses her lighter to set fire to the Watermen's photo book. This has photos of the victims inside and invigorates their bodies to rise up and fight back. They then kill the Watermen and end the nightmare once and for all. Now again, I cannot stress enough that these videos are not canon, but there are still tons of similarities between what we're seeing here and what's in the actual Walten Files.
I mean, you know, just the idea, again, like, seemingly, you know, if Bond, you know, one of the main people responsible for this is, you know, in Bond, and he's killed a bunch of other people, putting them into the other animatronics, then maybe at some point you're going to need to, like, break them out from under his control so then they can attack him or something like that. Both in the physical and the spiritual sense.
For example, the character Pumpkin Rabbit is not only voiced by the same actor who voices Bond, but he's also a serial killer who claws at the faces of their victims, just like Bond did to Susan. Additionally, Jay also uses her lighter to burn the photo album, which causes the downfall of the serial killers. And one of the only times we see Sophie in the Walten Files has her holding a lighter, just like Jay. Just like the Pumpkin Rabbit is the stand-in for Bond in this special, Jay is the stand-in for Sophie. And that means that just like Jay helped turn the victims against the serial killers, Sophie's going to help the victims of Bond rise up to defeat him, to escape this hell that they're trapped in. And that is how the Walten Files will end. Now, all we have to do is wait patiently for the next couple of episodes in the Walten Files to answer all of our questions. In the meantime, maybe we'll do videos breaking down the spin-off minisodes like Hotline. Let me know in the comments if that's something you're interested in. But until then, remember that it's all just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on...
God, honestly, again, I mean, like, thinking back, I haven't watched the Walten Files through myself, actually. I mean, I'm not going to have time to this week, but that might be something to do in the future. Like, just go back and watch the entirety of the Walten Files. You never know, that might be an idea. And just, you know, see it for myself. But yeah, again, like, so... just besides the story, which is, you know, honestly just, you know, FNAF if you cranked it up to 11, like the art style in this, it is so disturbing, and even like the normal living people look really weird. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.